The blood on her father's hands had dried 3 days ago, and tonight Theresa Turner would marry the man who put it there. She stood at the window of her bedroom in the small timber house at the edge of Calico, California, watching the desert turn gold under the setting sun of June 1882. The mining town sprawled below her in a haphazard collection of buildings clinging to the hillside, their weathered boards bleached pale by the relentless sun. Somewhere in one of those saloons, Vincent Marlowe was celebrating his upcoming nuptials with whiskey and cards, probably bragging about how he had finally gotten what he wanted after her father refused him for so long. Her father. The thought of him made her throat tighten. Thomas Turner had been a good man, a fair man who ran his silver mine with integrity in a town where that quality was rarer than water in August. When Vincent Marlowe had come sniffing around, asking for Theresa's hand with that cold smile that never reached his eyes, her father had seen right through him. He had refused. 3 times he had refused. And then, mysteriously, there had been that cave-in at the mine entrance. An accident, they called it. Her father trapped inside with 2 other miners, all of them dead before anyone could dig them out. Vincent had shown up at the funeral with flowers and condolences, and within a week, he had made his intentions clear to Theresa's mother. Marry him, or he would foreclose on the mortgage he held on their house and land. Theresa's mother, Margaret, had been broken by grief and fear. She had begged Theresa to accept, to save them from destitution. What choice did a 20-year-old woman have in 1882, alone in a mining town with no male relatives to protect her? So Theresa had said yes, though the word had tasted like poison in her mouth. Now she pressed her forehead against the cool glass, watching the shadows lengthen across the Mojave Desert that stretched beyond the town. Tomorrow at noon, she would put on the cream-colored dress hanging in her wardrobe and walk down the aisle of the small church on Main Street. She would become Mrs. Vincent Marlowe. The thought made her stomach turn. A knock at her door made her jump. "Theresa," her mother's voice thin and worried. "Are you all right, dear?" "I'm fine, Mama. Supper is ready. You should eat something." "You have barely touched your meals these past few days." Theresa closed her eyes. "I will be down shortly." She listened to her mother's footsteps retreat down the hallway, then turned back to the window. The sun had nearly disappeared now, leaving streaks of orange and purple across the sky. In the growing darkness, she could see her own reflection in the glass. Dark hair pulled back severely from a face that had grown thin with stress. Blue eyes that used to sparkle with life now looked haunted. She barely recognized herself. Movement in the yard below caught her attention. A figure on horseback was approaching the house, moving slowly up the dirt path. As the rider came closer, she recognized him as one of the ranch hands from the Double E spread, the cattle ranch that bordered the eastern edge of town. She had seen him before in passing, a tall man with sun-bronzed skin and dark hair, usually keeping to himself when he came into town for supplies. The rider stopped at the fence line and sat there for a moment, looking up at the house. Even from this distance, Theresa could feel his gaze. Then he touched the brim of his hat in what seemed like a salute or perhaps an acknowledgement, and rode away into the gathering dusk. Strange. She watched until he disappeared from view, then forced herself to turn away from the window. She had to go downstairs and eat something, had to pretend that everything was normal, that her life was not ending tomorrow. The evening passed in a blur of her mother's nervous chatter about the wedding preparations, the flowers that had been ordered, the cake that the baker's wife was making. Theresa pushed food around her plate and nodded at appropriate moments, but her mind was elsewhere. She kept thinking about her father's last words to her, spoken just days before his death. "Never let anyone make you smaller than you are, Tessie. You have fire in you." Do not let this world snuff it out. She had failed him. She was letting Vincent Marlowe snuff out whatever fire she had left. After supper, she excused herself and climbed the stairs to her room. Her mother called after her about getting enough rest, about looking fresh for the ceremony. Theresa closed her door and leaned against it, feeling the walls close in around her. She walked to her bed and sat down, staring at the wedding dress hanging in the corner. In the lamplight, it looked less like a bridal gown and more like a shroud. She did not know how long she sat there before she heard it, a soft sound against her window. A pebble, then another. Someone was throwing stones at her window from the yard below, her heart hammering. Theresa crossed to the window and looked down. The man from earlier, the ranch hand, stood in the shadows beneath the cottonwood tree. He gestured for her to open the window. Every instinct told her this was madness, but something in the set of his shoulders, the urgency of his gesture, made her unlatch the window and push it open. "Miss Turner," he called up in a low voice that would not carry far. "I need to speak with you. It is important." "Who are you?" she whispered back. "My name is Kane Emerson. I worked in your father's mine before I took the job at the Double E. Please, I have information about your father's death, but I cannot speak it here in the open. Will you come down?" Theresa's breath caught. Information about her father's death. She should be cautious, should not trust a stranger, but desperation made her reckless. "Give me a moment." She grabbed her shawl and moved quietly through the house. Her mother had already retired to her room, exhausted by the stress of the past weeks. Theresa slipped out the back door and around to the side yard where the cottonwood grew. Kane Emerson stood with his hat in his hands, and up close she could see he was younger than she had first thought, perhaps 25 or 26. He had a strong face, weathered by sun and wind, and eyes that held a mixture of determination and something that looked like guilt. "You worked in my father's mine?" she asked without preamble. "Yes, madam, for about 6 months until 2 weeks before the accident." He twisted his hat in his hands. "I left because Vincent Marlowe offered me twice the wages to work at the Double E, and I needed the money. I am not proud of it now, knowing what I know." "What do you know?" Kane glanced around, making sure they were alone. "I know that the cave-in was no accident. I was there 3 days before it happened, and I saw Marlowe's men placing charges in the support beams near the entrance. At the time, I thought they were just doing some excavation work Marlowe had authorized. Your father had taken Marlowe on as a limited partner when he needed capital to expand the mine. But now, looking back, I realize what they were doing." The world seemed to tilt beneath Theresa's feet. She had suspected, but hearing it confirmed was different. "He murdered my father." "Yes, madam, and once I realized it, I could not sit by and watch him take you too." Kane's dark eyes met hers with an intensity that made her breath catch. "That is what this marriage is, Miss Turner. He is taking you the way he took the mine, through force and deception, and I cannot let that happen without at least giving you a choice." "What choice do I have?" The bitterness in her voice surprised her. "He holds the mortgage on our home. If I refuse him, my mother and I will have nothing." "You could run." The word hung in the air between them like a promise and a threat all at once. "Run where?" Theresa asked. "I have no money, no family beyond my mother. Where would I go?" Kane stepped closer, and she could smell the clean scent of desert sage and leather on him. "I have been saving my wages for 2 years. I have enough to get us to San Francisco, maybe even further if needed. I have a cousin in Oregon who runs a lumber operation. He would give us work, a fresh start." "Us?" Theresa stared at him. "You would help me? Why, you do not even know me." Something flickered across Kane's face, a shadow of old pain. 5 years ago I had a sister, Rebecca. She was 17, beautiful, full of life. A man in our town, a wealthy man, decided he wanted her. My parents were poor, and this man made them the same kind of offer Marlowe made your mother. Marry him or lose everything. Rebecca did not want to, but she felt she had no choice. She married him. His voice went rough. He was cruel to her, beat her when he drank, which was often. 6 months after the wedding, she took her own life rather than spend another day as his wife. Tears sprang to Theresa's eyes. I am so sorry. I was away working cattle drives when it happened. I came home to find her already buried. My parents told me there was nothing I could have done, but I have never forgiven myself for not being there, for not helping her escape when she needed it. Kane looked at Theresa with such fierce determination that she felt it like a physical force. I cannot bring Rebecca back, but I can help you. I can give you the choice she never had. You do not have to marry Vincent Marlowe. You can run, and I will help you do it. Theresa's mind raced. This was insane. She did not know this man. Running away with him would be scandalous, would ruin her reputation forever. But then, what kind of reputation would she have as Vincent Marlowe's wife? What kind of life? The wedding is tomorrow at noon, she said slowly. When would we leave? Tonight. Right now, if you are willing. Kane's voice was urgent. Once you are married, it will be much harder. He will have legal rights over you. We need to go before that happens. My mother, Theresa protested. I cannot just leave her. Marlowe wants you, not her. Once you are gone, he will have no reason to hurt her. In fact, he might even leave the house alone rather than draw attention to his motivations. And once you are safely away and settled somewhere, you can send for her. Everything in Theresa's conventional upbringing told her this was wrong, that she should stay and honor her commitment, that running away with a strange man was the height of foolishness. But deeper than that, deeper than the rules and expectations that had been drilled into her since childhood, a voice rose up. Her father's voice. Never let anyone make you smaller than you are. She looked at Kane Emerson, this man who was offering her freedom at great risk to himself. If they were caught, if Marlowe found them, he could have Kane arrested or worse. Vincent Marlowe was a powerful man in calico, with the sheriff in his pocket and enough money to make problems disappear. If we do this, she said carefully, if I go with you, what would you expect from me in return? Kane understood the question behind the question. I expect nothing, Miss Turner. I will see you safely away from here, help you get settled somewhere new where Marlowe cannot find you, and then you can decide your own path. If you want me to leave you be once we reach safety, I will. If you want help finding work and a place to live, I will help with that. But I am not helping you so that I can trap you in a different cage. I am helping you so you can be free. The sincerity in his voice broke something loose in Theresa's chest, some tight knot of fear and despair that had been growing since her father's death. Here was a man willing to help her for no other reason than it was the right thing to do. Here was a chance to take control of her own life. How long do I have to decide? The longer we wait, the more dangerous it becomes. Marlowe has men watching the house. I had to wait until dark and approach from the back way through the ravine to avoid being seen. If we are going to do this, we need to leave within the hour while the town is still settling in for the night. An hour. Theresa's heart pounded so hard she thought it might burst from her chest. Could she do this? Could she really leave everything she had ever known? Run away with a stranger into the night? She thought of Vincent Marlowe's cold eyes, the way he looked at her like she was property he had purchased. She thought of her father, crushed under tons of rock because he had tried to protect her from that man. She thought of Kane's sister Rebecca, who had seen no other escape but death. I need to pack a few things, she said, and I need to leave a note for my mother. The relief that washed over Kane's face was profound. Pack only what you can carry in a small bag. We will be traveling fast and light. I have 2 horses waiting in the ravine behind your property. Can you be ready in half an hour? Yes. The word came out stronger than she felt, but once she said it, something inside her solidified. This was happening. She was doing this. "I will wait here," Kane said. "If you change your mind, I will understand, but if you are coming, come quickly and quietly, and Miss Turner, wear riding clothes if you have them. We have a long journey ahead." Theresa nodded and hurried back into the house. Her hands shook as she moved through her room, pulling out her most practical dress, her riding boots, a warm coat for cold nights. She grabbed a few personal items: her mother's silver hairbrush that had been a wedding gift from her father, a small leather journal her father had given her for her 18th birthday. Everything else she left behind. The hardest part was the letter. She sat at her small writing desk and stared at the blank paper, trying to find words that would make this hurt less. Finally, she wrote, "Dearest Mama, by the time you read this, I will be gone. Please do not be frightened and do not blame yourself. I cannot marry Vincent Marlowe. I believe he killed Papa, and I cannot spend my life chained to the man who took him from us. A friend is helping me get to safety. I will write to you once I am settled and send for you when I can. Please do not try to find me right away. Let Marlowe think I have truly vanished. It will be safer for both of us that way. I love you, Mama. I am sorry for the pain this will cause you, but I am doing what Papa would have wanted. I am choosing freedom over fear. Your loving daughter." Theresa. She folded the letter and left it on her pillow, weighed down with the small brooch her mother had given her for her confirmation. She took one last look around the room where she had grown up, saying a silent goodbye to the life she was leaving behind. Then she changed quickly into her riding clothes, threw her coat over her arm, grabbed her small bag, and crept back down the stairs. The house was silent. Her mother's gentle snoring drifted from her bedroom. Theresa paused at her mother's door, fighting the urge to go in and wake her to say goodbye properly. But that would only make this harder, and her mother might try to stop her. Better this way, cleaner. She slipped out the back door and around to the side yard. Kane was exactly where she had left him, patient as stone. When he saw her, he moved immediately to her side. "Follow me," he whispered. "Step where I step and stay quiet." They moved through the darkness like ghosts, skirting the edge of the property and heading toward the ravine that cut through the hills behind the town. Theresa's heart hammered in her chest with every step. She kept expecting to hear a shout, to feel a hand grab her shoulder, to be dragged back to face Vincent Marlowe's wrath. But they made it to the ravine without incident. 2 horses waited there, their reins tied to a stunted juniper tree. One was a sturdy bay gelding, the other a smaller gray mare with intelligent eyes. "The mare is gentle but fast," Kane said as he helped Theresa secure her bag to the saddle. "She will carry you well. Have you ridden much?" "Enough," Theresa said. Her father had taught her to ride when she was a girl, and she had always loved the freedom of it. "Good. We need to cover as much ground as possible before dawn. Once they discover you are gone, Marlowe will send men after us." Kane swung up onto the bay with practiced ease. "Are you ready?" Theresa put her foot in the stirrup and pulled herself up into the saddle. The familiar feel of a horse beneath her, the smell of leather and animal warmth, steadied her nerves. She looked back toward town, toward the lights glowing in windows, toward everything familiar and safe and suffocating. "I am ready," she said. They rode. The desert at night was a different world, painted in shades of silver and shadow under the rising moon. They headed northeast, away from the main roads, following trails that Kane seemed to know by instinct. The air was cool and smelled of sage and creosote. Above them, the stars wheeled in their ancient patterns, so bright and numerous that Theresa felt she could reach up and pluck them from the sky. They rode for hours without speaking, pushing the horses at a steady pace that ate up the miles without exhausting the animals. Theresa found herself falling into the rhythm of it, the creak of leather and the soft thud of hooves on packed earth, the occasional call of a coyote in the distance. This was real. She had done it. She had escaped. When the moon was high overhead, Kane finally called a halt near a small spring he said he had used before. They dismounted and let the horses drink while they rested in the shadow of a rock outcropping. "How are you holding up?" Kane asked, offering her a canteen. Theresa drank deeply before answering. "I am well. Sore but well. How far have we come?" "Maybe 15 miles. We will need to rest the horses for an hour, then push on before dawn. I want to be at least 30 miles away before anyone in Calico realizes you are gone." He settled back against a rock and pushed his hat back on his head. "There is a town called Barstow about 40 miles northeast of here. We can catch a stage from there to Los Angeles, then a train north. It will be harder for Marlowe to track us once we are on the train." "You have thought this through." It was not a question. "I have been planning it for 3 days, ever since I heard about the wedding." Kane looked at her across the small space between them. "I know this must all seem sudden and frightening to you. I am a stranger and you have taken a leap of faith coming with me, but I want you to know that I will do everything in my power to keep you safe. That is a promise." "Why?" The question came out softer than she intended. "You said you were helping me because of your sister, and I understand that. But this is dangerous for you. If Marlowe catches us, he could have you killed. Why risk so much for someone you do not know?" Kane was quiet for a long moment, staring out at the desert. When he spoke, his voice was thoughtful. "After Rebecca died, I was angry at the whole world. Angry at my parents for not standing up to that man. Angry at the town for letting it happen. Angry at God for allowing such cruelty. But most of all, I was angry at myself. I swore that if I ever had the chance to help someone in a similar situation, I would take it, no matter the cost. When I heard you were being forced to marry Marlowe, and when I realized what he had done to your father, I knew this was that chance." He turned to look at her then, and even in the moonlight she could see the intensity in his eyes. "But I will be honest with you, Miss Turner. These past 3 days, as I have been planning this and working up the courage to approach you, it has become about more than just keeping a promise to myself. I have watched you in town, seen the way you hold your head up even though I know you must be breaking inside. I have seen your strength, your dignity, and I find myself wanting to know you, wanting to help you not just out of duty to my sister's memory, but because you matter, because you deserve better than Vincent Marlowe." Theresa's throat tightened with emotion. No one had spoken to her like that in so long, with such genuine respect and care. "Thank you," she whispered, "for seeing me as a person and not just a problem to be solved or a prize to be won. You are so much more than that," Kane said quietly. They sat in comfortable silence after that, watching the stars and listening to the horses graze on the sparse desert grass. Theresa felt something shifting inside her, some frozen part of her heart beginning to thaw. She studied Kane's profile in the moonlight, the strong line of his jaw, the thoughtful set of his mouth. He was handsome, she realized, but it was more than that. There was a goodness in him, a core of integrity that reminded her of her father. When they set off again, riding through the deep hours of the night, Theresa felt something she had not felt in weeks. Hope. Dawn was breaking over the eastern hills when they finally stopped to make a proper camp in a sheltered canyon. The horses were tired, and so were they. Kane showed Theresa how to unsaddle the mare and rub her down. Then he built a small fire and made coffee and bacon from his supplies. "We will rest here through the heat of the day," he said, handing her a tin cup of strong, bitter coffee. "The horses need it, and so do we. We will set out again at dusk and ride through the night to Barstow." That should put enough distance between us and Calico that we can risk traveling by day after that." Theresa nodded, too tired to do much more than sip her coffee and nibble at the bacon. Now that they had stopped moving, exhaustion was catching up with her, along with the full weight of what she had done. She had run away from her wedding. She had abandoned her mother. She was alone in the desert with a man she barely knew, with no clear plan for the future beyond running and hiding. Panic fluttered in her chest, but before it could take hold, Kane spoke. "You are safe," he said, as if reading her thoughts. "I know this is overwhelming, but you are safe. You made the right choice. No matter what happens from here, you are free of Marlowe, and that is what matters." "Is it?" Theresa heard the despair creeping into her voice and hated herself for it. "I am free, but at what cost? My mother is alone. My reputation is destroyed. I am a fugitive. Some freedom." Kane set down his coffee and moved closer to her, not touching but near enough that she could feel the steadiness of his presence. "Your mother is alive and unharmed. Your reputation is only destroyed in a town full of people who were willing to let you be sold to a murderer. And you are not a fugitive. You are a woman who chose her own path. Those are not small things, Miss Turner. Please," she said, suddenly tired of formality. "Call me Theresa. If we are going to be traveling together, there is no need for such formality." "Theresa," he said, and the way he said her name with such gentleness made something warm bloom in her chest. "I am Kane, and I promise you, whatever comes next, you will not face it alone." She looked into his eyes and saw the truth of his words there. This man, this stranger who had upended his own life to save her, meant every word. And for the first time since her father's death, Theresa felt like she could breathe. "Thank you, Kane," she said, "for everything." He smiled at her, a real smile that transformed his face from merely handsome to something that made her heart skip. "Get some rest. I will keep watch." Theresa wrapped herself in her coat and lay down near the fire, using her bag as a pillow. She thought she would be too keyed up to sleep, but the moment she closed her eyes, exhaustion dragged her under like a tide. She woke to the sound of voices and the feel of Kane's hand over her mouth, his face close to hers, urgent and frightened. "Do not make a sound," he breathed directly into her ear. "There are riders nearby." Terror jolted through her. She nodded to show she understood, and Kane removed his hand. They were pressed together in the shadows of an overhang, the fire long since kicked out. Through the rocks, she could hear the sounds of horses and men talking. "The tracks lead into this canyon," a rough voice said. "They must have stopped here, spread out and search, Vincent Marlowe's men. They had been found." Kane's arm came around her, pulling her tight against him, shielding her with his body. She could feel his heart hammering against her back, could feel the tension in every line of him. They barely breathed as the sounds of the search grew closer. Footsteps crunched on gravel. A shadow fell across their hiding spot. Theresa closed her eyes and prayed to a god she was no longer sure was listening. "Nothing here," the rough voice called out. "Just some old animal bones and dead brush. They must have pushed through to the other side." "Then stop wasting time and get moving," another voice snapped. "Marlowe wants that girl found before she gets too far. He is willing to pay triple wages to whoever brings her back." The footsteps retreated. The voices faded. But Kane and Theresa stayed frozen in place for what felt like hours, listening as the riders mounted up and moved on, following the canyon in the wrong direction. When silence finally fell, Kane let out a shaky breath. "They will figure out they are on the wrong trail eventually. We need to move, and we need to be smart about it." "How did they find us so fast?" Theresa's voice shook. "I do not know. I was careful about covering our tracks." Kane pulled back and looked at her, his face grim. "Marlowe must have had men out searching from the moment he heard you were gone." They probably split up and covered every possible route out of Calico. We got lucky that they did not search this spot more thoroughly. What do we do now? Kane thought for a moment, his jaw tight. We cannot go to Barstow now. That is where they will expect us to go. We need to change our plans, take a route they would not anticipate. He looked toward the west, where the sun was beginning its afternoon descent. There is an old mission about 20 miles southwest of here, near the Santa Fe Trail. A priest there, Father Miguel, helped me once when I was in trouble. He is a good man. If we can make it there, he will hide us and help us figure out our next move. Southwest. Theresa tried to orient herself. But that takes us closer to Calico, not further away. Exactly. They will expect us to run as far and fast as possible. They will not think to look for us doubling back. Kane began to quickly pack their supplies. It is risky, but I think it is our best chance. Theresa helped him, her hands moving on autopilot while her mind raced. She had thought the hard part was over, that getting away from Calico was the biggest hurdle. She had been naive. Marlowe was not going to let her go easily. He had invested too much, committed murder to get what he wanted. He would hunt her to the ends of the earth if necessary. But she was not alone. She looked at Kane as he saddled the horses with quick, efficient movements, and felt a surge of gratitude and something else, something warmer and more complicated. This man was risking everything for her. The least she could do was be brave enough to match his courage. They set out as the sun began to sink toward the western horizon, riding carefully and watching constantly for any sign of pursuit. Kane led them through terrain that seemed impossible to navigate. Narrow gaps between rocks, dry creek beds that hid their tracks, stretches of hardpan where the horses left barely a mark. He moved with a confidence born of years spent in this harsh land, and Theresa found herself trusting his instincts completely. As night fell, they stopped to rest the horses briefly. They did not risk a fire, just ate some jerky and hardtack from Kane's supplies and drank sparingly from their canteens. "Tell me about this priest," Theresa said quietly as they sat in the darkness. "How do you know him?" Kane was silent for a moment, and she thought he might not answer. Then he said, "About 3 years ago I got into some trouble in Los Angeles. There was a fight and a man got hurt badly. It was not entirely my fault, but the law did not see it that way. I ran, and I ended up at Father Miguel's mission, half-starved and desperate. He took me in, hid me, fed me, and when things cooled down he helped me get work at the Double E. He never asked for anything in return, never judged me. He just helped because that is who he is. He sounds like a good man. He is, one of the best I have ever known." Kane looked at her across the darkness. "He will help us, Theresa. I am sure of it." They rode on through the night, and as the hours passed, Theresa found herself watching Kane more than the trail ahead. There was something mesmerizing about the way he moved with his horse, as if they were one creature. Something compelling about the careful way he navigated them through danger, always thinking ahead, always planning. She realized with a start that she felt safe with him, truly safe in a way she had not felt since her father died. More than that, she was beginning to feel something she had not expected. Interest. Attraction. The beginnings of something that could, given time, become much more. The thought should have frightened her. She had just escaped one man who wanted to own her. The last thing she needed was to develop feelings for another man, even one as kind as Kane. But there was a fundamental difference between Vincent Marlowe and Kane Emerson. Marlowe wanted to possess her. Kane wanted to free her. That difference meant everything. Dawn was painting the sky in shades of pink and gold when they finally saw the mission. A low adobe building with a cross rising from its roof, surrounded by a few scraggly trees and a small garden. Smoke rose from a chimney, promising warmth and breakfast and, most importantly, sanctuary. Kane let out a breath of relief. We made it. They rode up to the mission slowly, not wanting to startle anyone. Before they even reached the building, a door opened and a man emerged. He was short and round, with brown skin weathered by years in the sun and a shock of white hair that seemed to glow in the morning light. His face broke into a wide smile when he saw Kane. "My boy," he called out in a voice rich with warmth and a slight Spanish accent. "I thought I heard horses. What brings you to my door at such an early hour?" Then his eyes landed on Theresa, and his expression shifted to one of concern. "And with a companion in distress, I see." "Father Miguel," Kane said as he dismounted, "we need your help. We are in trouble and we have nowhere else to go." The priest's face grew serious. "Then you have come to the right place. Come inside, both of you. Bring your horses around back where they will not be seen from the road. We will talk over breakfast." Father Miguel's mission was small but comfortable, with thick adobe walls that kept the interior cool even as the day grew hot outside. He fed them eggs and beans and fresh tortillas, and as they ate, Kane explained the situation. He told Father Miguel about Teresa's father's murder, about Marlowe forcing her into marriage, about their escape, and the men hunting them. The priest listened without interruption, his dark eyes moving between Kane and Theresa with understanding and compassion. When Kane finished, Father Miguel sat back in his chair and was quiet for a long moment. "This Vincent Marlowe sounds like a man who has sold his soul for earthly power," he said finally. "I have known such men before. They do not let go of what they consider theirs easily." He looked at Theresa. "But you are not his child. You are your own and God's. He has no right to you, no matter what papers he might have forced you to sign." "We did not sign papers yet," Theresa said. "We left the night before the wedding." "Good. That is very good." Father Miguel stood and began to pace, his hands clasped behind his back. "This gives us options. If you were already married, it would be much more complicated. But as things stand, you are simply a young woman who chose not to marry a man she did not want. That is not a crime." "But Marlowe will not see it that way," Kane said. "He will claim she ran away from her obligations, that she destroyed his reputation. He might even claim I kidnapped her." "Did you?" Father Miguel's eyes were sharp. "No," Theresa said firmly before Kane could answer. "He saved me. I went with him willingly, gratefully. Kane has been nothing but honorable." The priest nodded, satisfied. "Then we simply need to get you somewhere safe, somewhere Marlowe's influence does not reach. You mentioned wanting to go to Oregon, Kane." "Yes, Father. I have a cousin there who would help us. Oregon is good, but it is a long journey, and Marlowe's men will be watching the main routes." Father Miguel stopped pacing and looked at them thoughtfully. "I have a better idea. I have a sister in San Diego, a widow who runs a boarding house there. She is always in need of help, and she asks no questions about people's pasts. I can send word to her, tell her to expect you. San Diego is far enough from Calico that Marlowe is less likely to look there, and it is a growing town where two people can disappear easily." "Would she really take us in?" Theresa asked. "She would do it as a favor to me, but you would earn your keep. She would expect you both to work." Father Miguel smiled. "But it would give you a safe place to stay while you plan your next move and time to let things cool down in Calico. After a few months, when the search has died down, you could travel north to Oregon or anywhere else you wish." Kane and Theresa looked at each other. The plan made sense. Trying to make it all the way to Oregon right now, with Marlowe's men actively hunting them, was dangerous. But San Diego was less than 100 miles away, and the route would take them through terrain that Kane knew. "What do you think?" Kane asked her. Theresa realized he was genuinely asking for her opinion, treating her as an equal partner in this decision. The simple respect in that gesture moved her deeply. "I think it sounds wise. We need time to catch our breaths and plan properly, and if your sister is willing to help us, Father, then I am grateful for the opportunity." "Good, it is settled then." Father Miguel clapped his hands together. "You will stay here today and rest. I will write a letter to my sister. Tonight after dark you will set out for San Diego. I will give you directions and supplies for the journey." "Thank you, Father," Kane said, his voice thick with emotion. "I owe you more than I can ever repay." "You owe me nothing, my son. I am simply doing what Christ calls us all to do, offering shelter to those in need." The priest smiled at them both. "Now, you both look exhausted. There are rooms in the back where you can rest. Sleep while you can. Tonight will be another long ride." Father Miguel showed them to two small rooms, simple but clean, with narrow beds and windows that looked out on the desert. Theresa could barely keep her eyes open as she removed her boots and lay down on the bed. She was asleep within moments. She woke to the sound of voices and sunlight slanting through the window at a sharp angle. Afternoon, then. She had slept for hours. She sat up slowly, her muscles stiff from riding, and listened. The voices were coming from the courtyard, Kane and Father Miguel, talking quietly. She got up and splashed water on her face from the basin on the small table, then made her way toward the voices. She found them sitting in the shade of the courtyard, sipping coffee and talking like old friends. "Ah, she rises," Father Miguel said warmly. "Come, sit. There is coffee, and I have some bread and cheese if you are hungry." Theresa accepted a cup of coffee and sat down next to Kane, who gave her a warm smile. "Sleep well. Better than I have in weeks," she admitted. There was something about the peace of this place, the thick walls and the gentle presence of Father Miguel, that made her feel safe in a way she had not felt since before her father's death. They spent the afternoon in quiet conversation, and Theresa found herself opening up to the priest in a way she had not expected. She told him about her father, about the mine and the life they had built in Calico, about her mother's fear and her own desperation. Father Miguel listened with the patience of someone who had heard 1,000 such stories of suffering and still found each one important. "Your father sounds like he was a man of great integrity," the priest said. "He would be proud of you for choosing freedom over fear." "I hope so," Theresa said softly. "I hope I did the right thing, leaving my mother alone." "You did the only thing you could do to survive," Father Miguel said firmly, "and your mother will understand that in time. A mother's love does not die because her daughter chooses to save herself." As the sun began to set, painting the desert in shades of orange and purple, Father Miguel brought out supplies for their journey. Food, water, a map with the route to San Diego marked out, and a letter for his sister sealed with wax. "The journey should take you 3 nights of travel if you are careful," he said. "Stay off the main roads as much as possible. There are places marked on the map where you can find water and shelter. My sister's boarding house is on the north side of San Diego, on a street called Juniper Avenue. Give her this letter, and she will know what to do." "How can we ever thank you?" Theresa asked, her eyes burning with grateful tears. Father Miguel took her hands in his and looked at her with such kindness that she felt her heart might break. "Thank me by living a good life, child. Thank me by being free and happy and choosing your own path from this day forward. That is all the thanks I need." They set out as darkness fell, their horses rested and their spirits lifted by Father Miguel's kindness. The priest stood in the doorway of his mission, silhouetted against the lamplight, and raised his hand in blessing as they rode away. "He is a remarkable man," Theresa said as the mission disappeared behind them into the night. "He is," Kane agreed. "He has a gift for seeing people as they truly are, not as the world has labeled them. That is rare." They rode in comfortable silence for a while, following the trail Father Miguel had marked on the map. The night was cool and clear, with a gentle breeze that carried the scent of the desert in bloom. Above them, the stars wheeled in their ancient dance, and Theresa felt a sense of peace settling over her. "Can I ask you something?" Kane said after they had been riding for an hour or so. "Of course." "What do you want, Theresa? I mean, beyond just getting away from Marlowe, what do you want for your life?" It was a question no one had ever asked her before, and it took her a moment to formulate an answer. "I want to matter," she said finally. "I want to do something meaningful with my life, something that makes a difference. I do not want to just be someone's wife or daughter or property. I want to be my own person, to make my own choices." She paused, then added softly, "And I want to be loved for who I am, not for what I can provide or what I represent." Kane was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "Those are good things to want, important things." "What about you?" she asked. "What do you want?" "I want what I have never had," Kane said thoughtfully. "A home. Not just a place to sleep, but a real home with people who matter to me and who I matter to. I have been drifting for years, working ranch jobs and cattle drives, never staying anywhere long enough to put down roots. I want to change that. I want to build something that lasts." "Why have you not done it before now?" Kane's expression grew shadowed. "After Rebecca died, I could not stand to be in one place. Everywhere I went, I saw reminders of her, of my failure to save her, so I kept moving, kept running. But running does not heal anything. It just delays the pain." Theresa felt a surge of compassion for this man who carried so much guilt for something that was not his fault. "You did not fail your sister, Kane. You could not have known what would happen. You were not there." "That is the point, though. I was not there when she needed me." Kane looked at her, and in the moonlight she could see the raw pain in his eyes. "But I was there for you. Maybe that is why I had to go through all that, so I would be in the right place at the right time to help you. Maybe everything happens for a reason." "Do you really believe that?" "I am beginning to," Kane said. "Because if I had not come to Calico, if I had not taken that job at the Double E, I would not have been there to help you escape. And I cannot imagine a world where I let that happen, where I stood by and did nothing while you were forced to marry that monster." The intensity in his voice made Theresa's breath catch. She realized that this was about more than just keeping a promise to his dead sister. Kane cared about her, personally and specifically. And the truth was, she was beginning to care about him too. They made good progress over the next 3 nights, following Father Miguel's map and avoiding the main trails. The journey was not without its challenges. They had to detour around a camp of bandits on the second night, hiding in the rocks while dangerous-looking men passed within 100 yards of them. On the third night, Theresa's horse threw a shoe, and Kane had to spend an hour fixing it by moonlight with tools from his saddlebag. But through it all, they worked together as a team, and with each passing day, Theresa felt herself growing stronger, more confident. She was learning that she was capable of more than she had ever imagined. She could ride all night, sleep on the hard ground, eat cold beans and hardtack without complaint. She could face danger with courage and uncertainty with grace. She was discovering who she was when all the expectations and limitations of her old life were stripped away, and she was falling in love. It happened gradually, like the sunrise, so that she did not notice it at first. But by the time they saw the lights of San Diego glowing in the distance on the 4th night, Theresa had to acknowledge the truth. She loved Kane Emerson. She loved his quiet strength, his gentle kindness, his fierce protectiveness. She loved the way he looked at her like she was the most important person in the world, the way he listened when she spoke, the way he never tried to tell her what to do but instead asked for her opinion. She loved him, and the realization was both thrilling and terrifying. San Diego was larger than Calico, a bustling port town with ships in the harbor and buildings that climbed the hillsides. They found Juniper Avenue easily and located Father Miguel's sister's boarding house, a sturdy two-story building with a painted sign that read, "Rosa's Rooms." It was early morning when they knocked on the door, and the woman who answered was clearly Father Miguel's sister. She had the same warm brown skin and kind eyes, though her hair was still dark and pulled back in a severe bun. She took one look at them, dusty and exhausted, and her face broke into a smile. "You must be Kane and Theresa," she said in accented English. "My brother's letter arrived 2 days ago. Come in, come in. You look like you have ridden through hell itself." Rosa proved to be as kind as her brother, asking no questions about their circumstances as she showed them to rooms on the second floor and promised them hot baths and a good breakfast. She put Theresa in a room with a view of the harbor and Kane in the room next door. "Rest today," she said. "Tomorrow we will talk about work and how long you plan to stay. But for now you are safe here, and that is what matters." Theresa had her first hot bath in days, washing away the dust and grime of the trail. She put on a clean dress that Rosa had lent her and felt almost human again. When she came downstairs, she found Kane already in the dining room, freshly shaved and looking more handsome than any man had a right to look. He stood when he saw her, and something in his expression made her heart skip. "You look beautiful," he said simply. "Thank you." She felt herself blushing. "You look rather presentable yourself." They ate breakfast together, a feast of eggs and fresh bread and fruit, and talked about their plans. They would stay here for a while, work for Rosa to earn their keep and save money, and wait for the search to die down. Then they would decide their next move together. The word "together" hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning. Over the following weeks, they settled into a routine. Kane took work at the docks, loading and unloading ships, while Theresa helped Rosa run the boarding house, cooking and cleaning and managing the accounts. It was hard work, but honest work, and Theresa found she enjoyed it. She enjoyed the independence of earning her own money, the satisfaction of a job well done. More than that, she enjoyed the time she spent with Kane. They ate dinner together every evening, talking for hours about everything and nothing. They took walks along the harbor on Sunday afternoons, watching the ships come and go. They attended church services at the small mission near the boarding house, sitting side by side in the pews. And slowly, carefully, they grew closer. Kane never pushed, never demanded anything from her. He was content to let their relationship develop at its own pace, to let Theresa set the boundaries. But she could see the way he looked at her when he thought she was not paying attention, could feel the electricity that sparked between them whenever they accidentally touched. One evening, about a month after their arrival in San Diego, they were sitting on the back porch of the boarding house, watching the sun set over the Pacific Ocean. Rosa had gone to visit a friend, and the other boarders were out, leaving them alone. "I received a letter from my mother today," Theresa said quietly. She had written to her mother 2 weeks after arriving in San Diego, carefully wording the letter to give no clue as to her location, just assuring her that she was safe and well. "What did she say?" Kane asked. "She said she understands why I left. She said she is proud of me for being brave." Theresa's voice trembled. "She also said that Vincent Marlowe has given up the search. He told everyone I ran off with a drifter, that I was always too wild and headstrong, and good riddance. He has already moved on to courting the daughter of another mining family." "So you are free," Kane said. "Truly free. He is not hunting you anymore. It would seem so." Theresa should have felt relieved, but instead she felt oddly hollow. "My mother also said that she is selling the house and moving to Santa Barbara to live with her sister. She said there is nothing for her in Calico anymore, not without my father. Kane reached over and took her hand, lacing his fingers through hers. It was the most intimate touch they had shared, and it sent warmth flooding through her. "I am sorry," he said. "I know you hoped she might join you here eventually. I am glad she is leaving Calico. That town held nothing but pain for both of us." Theresa looked down at their joined hands. "But it does mean I truly have no ties left to my old life. I am completely free to go wherever I want, be whoever I want to be." "That is a gift," Kane said softly. "Not everyone gets that chance." "What about you?" Theresa turned to look at him. "You gave up your job at the Double E to help me. You upended your whole life. Do you regret it?" "Not for a single moment." Kane's dark eyes met hers with an intensity that stole her breath. "Theresa, these past weeks with you have been the happiest of my life. Getting to know you, working beside you, building this new life with you. It has shown me what I was missing all those years I spent drifting. You have shown me what home feels like." Theresa's heart was pounding so hard she was sure he could hear it. "Kane, I know this is not the right time," he said quickly. "I know you have been through so much, and the last thing you need is another man making demands on you. But I have to tell you how I feel, because keeping it inside is killing me. I love you, Theresa. I am in love with you. And if you never feel the same way, if you only ever want to be friends, I will accept that. But I had to tell you. I had to be honest." For a moment, Theresa could not speak. Her throat was tight with emotion, her eyes burning with tears. Then she leaned forward and kissed him, pouring everything she felt into that kiss, all the gratitude and affection and love that had been building inside her for weeks. Kane froze for just a moment, clearly shocked. Then his arms came around her and he was kissing her back with a passion that made her head spin. It was nothing like the chaste kisses she had received from boys when she was younger. This was deep and consuming, a meeting of souls as much as bodies. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Theresa rested her forehead against his and whispered, "I love you too. I have been falling in love with you since the night you threw stones at my window and offered me freedom. You are the best man I have ever known, Kane Emerson, and I do not want to spend another day without you." Kane let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob, and pulled her close again, burying his face in her hair. "I cannot believe this is real," he murmured. "I cannot believe I get to have this, to have you." "You saved me," Theresa said, pulling back to look at him. "In every way a person can be saved. You gave me my life back. How could I not love you?" They sat there in the gathering darkness, holding each other, and Theresa felt a peace settle over her that she had never known before. This was right. This was what love was supposed to feel like, not ownership or obligation, but partnership and respect and genuine care. Over the following months, their relationship deepened. Kane formally asked Rosa for permission to court Theresa, and the older woman gave her blessing with tears in her eyes, saying she had known from the moment they arrived that they were meant for each other. They continued to work and save money, making plans for their future. Kane wrote to his cousin in Oregon, explaining the situation and asking if the offer of work still stood. The response came back enthusiastic. There was plenty of work in the lumber camps, and his cousin would be happy to have them both. They could start fresh in Oregon, far from Calico and Vincent Marlowe and everything that had happened. But before they could leave, there was something they both wanted to do. On a bright morning in October 1882, 6 months after fleeing Calico, Kane and Theresa stood before Father Miguel in his mission and exchanged vows. Rosa had traveled from San Diego to stand as witness, along with a few of the ranch hands from a nearby spread who Kane had befriended. It was a simple ceremony. Nothing like the elaborate wedding that had been planned for Theresa and Vincent Marlowe, and it was perfect. Theresa wore a dress Rosa had made for her, simple white cotton with lace at the collar and sleeves. Kane wore his best clothes, his hair slicked back and his face shining with joy. When Father Miguel pronounced them husband and wife, and Kane kissed her, Theresa felt like her heart might burst from happiness. They spent their wedding night at the mission, in a small guest house Father Miguel kept for travelers. And there, in the quiet darkness with the desert wind singing outside, they came together as husband and wife for the first time. Kane was gentle and patient, taking his time, making sure she felt safe and cherished. And when they finally joined together, it was with a sense of rightness and completion that brought tears to Theresa's eyes. Afterward, they lay tangled together in the narrow bed, and Theresa traced patterns on Kane's chest with her fingers. "I never thought I could be this happy," she whispered. "After my father died, I thought happiness was something I would never feel again." "You deserve all the happiness in the world," Kane said, kissing the top of her head. "And I am going to spend the rest of my life making sure you have it." They left for Oregon a week later, taking the stage north to Los Angeles and then the train to Portland. From there, they traveled by wagon to the lumber camp where Kane's cousin worked, a rough settlement in the forests of the Cascade Mountains. Kane's cousin, a burly man named Kevin Easton, welcomed them with open arms. He gave Kane work in the lumber operation and helped them build a small cabin on a piece of land at the edge of the camp. It was hard work, clearing trees and milling lumber, but Kane thrived on it. And Theresa found her place too, cooking for the lumber crews and eventually starting a small school for the children of the workers. Their life was simple but good. They had enough to eat, a roof over their heads and each other. That was all they needed. A year after arriving in Oregon, Theresa discovered she was pregnant. The news filled them both with a joy tinged with fear. They were still young, still finding their way, and the responsibility of bringing a child into the world felt enormous. But as Theresa's belly grew and they felt the baby kick and move inside her, the fear faded, replaced by excitement and wonder. Their son was born in the spring of 1884, a healthy boy with Kane's dark hair and Theresa's blue eyes. They named him Thomas, after Theresa's father, and the moment Kane held his son for the first time, tears streaming down his face, Theresa knew they had made the right choice in everything. Thomas was followed 2 years later by a daughter they named Rebecca, in honor of Kane's sister. And 2 years after that, another son, Michael. Their cabin was always full of noise and laughter, of children playing and love growing. Theresa wrote to her mother regularly, and Margaret eventually came to visit, traveling all the way from Santa Barbara to meet her grandchildren. The visit was bittersweet, full of tears and forgiveness and reconciliation. Margaret stayed for 3 months, and when she left, she told Theresa how proud she was of the life her daughter had built, of the courage she had shown in choosing her own path. "Your father would be so proud," Margaret said on her last day, holding Theresa's hands. "He always knew you were meant for great things. He would be proud that you found the strength to save yourself and that you found a man who truly loves you for who you are." The years passed in a blur of work and family and simple joys. Kane advanced in the lumber company, eventually becoming a foreman, and they were able to buy their own land and build a larger house. Theresa's school grew, and she became known throughout the region as an excellent teacher. Their children grew tall and strong, learning the value of hard work and the importance of standing up for what was right. Sometimes, on quiet evenings when the children were asleep, Kane and Theresa would sit on their porch and watch the sun set over the mountains, and they would talk about how far they had come. About the night, Kane threw stones at her window and offered her a chance at freedom. About the desperate ride through the desert, the kindness of Father Miguel, the new life they had built together from nothing. "You ever regret it?" Kane asked one such evening when they had been married for nearly 10 years. "Giving up your old life, running away with a stranger?" Theresa leaned against his shoulder and smiled. "Not for a single moment. You gave me the greatest gift anyone has ever given me. You gave me the chance to choose my own life. And I chose you every day since then and every day for the rest of my life." Kane pulled her close and kissed her temple. "I am the luckiest man alive." "We are both lucky," Theresa corrected. "Lucky that we found each other, lucky that we had the courage to take a chance, lucky that we built this beautiful life together." As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold, their oldest son Thomas called from inside the house that dinner was ready. They stood and walked inside together, hand in hand, into the warm light and laughter of their home. Vincent Marlowe was a distant memory now, a shadow from another life. Theresa rarely thought of him anymore, and when she did, it was with pity more than fear. He had tried to trap her, to own her, to make her less than she was, but he had failed. She had escaped, had chosen freedom, had built a life on her own terms with a man who loved and respected her as an equal. Years continued to flow like a river. The children grew and eventually left home to build their own lives. Thomas became a teacher like his mother, working in a school in Portland. Rebecca married a kind farmer and gave Kane and Theresa their first grandchildren. Michael took after his father, working in the lumber trade and eventually starting his own mill. Kane's hair turned gray at the temples, and lines appeared around Theresa's eyes, but their love never faded. If anything, it grew deeper with each passing year, tempered by shared experiences and strengthened by unwavering commitment. On their 20th wedding anniversary, Kane surprised Theresa with a trip back to California. Not to Calico, which had become a ghost town after the silver mines played out, but to Father Miguel's mission. The old priest was still there, now ancient and bent, but still with that same warm smile and kind eyes. "My children," he said when he saw them, tears streaming down his weathered face. "You came back." They spent a week at the mission, helping Father Miguel with repairs and telling him about their life, their children, the home they had built in Oregon. The priest listened with joy, nodding and laughing and occasionally wiping his eyes. "You see," he said on their last evening, "I knew you were meant for each other from the moment I saw you. God's hand was in your meeting, in your escape, in everything that followed. You have built exactly the kind of life He wants for His children, full of love and purpose and joy." "We could not have done it without you," Kane said seriously. "You saved us, Father. You gave us the chance to start over." "No, my son, I simply showed you the path. You too did the hard work of walking it." Father Miguel took both their hands in his frail ones. "And you have walked it beautifully. I am honored to have played even a small part in your story." They left the mission the next morning with Father Miguel's blessing ringing in their ears, and as they traveled back north to Oregon, Theresa reflected on how strange and wonderful life could be. How a moment of courage, a decision to trust a stranger, could change everything. How the worst night of her life, the night before she was supposed to marry Vincent Marlowe, had actually been the beginning of the best part of her life. More years passed. They celebrated their 25th anniversary, their 30th. Their grandchildren multiplied, and then great-grandchildren began to arrive. Kane retired from the lumber company, and they spent their days tending a garden, reading and enjoying the peace they had earned. When Theresa was 62 years old, she received word that Vincent Marlowe had died. He had spent his final years as a bitter, lonely man in Sacramento. his wealth gone, his cruelty having finally caught up with him. The news should have brought her some satisfaction, but instead she felt only a distant sadness for a life wasted on greed and control. "I forgive him," she told Kane that evening as they sat on their porch. "Not because he deserves it, but because I deserve peace. He took my father from me, but he did not get to take my life. I won that battle. We won." Kane squeezed her hand. "Your father would be proud of you, so proud." They sat in comfortable silence as the sun set, as they had done thousands of times before. The mountains were purple in the distance. The air was sweet with pine and the flowers from Theresa's garden, and somewhere inside the house they could hear the laughter of their youngest granddaughter, who was visiting for the summer. This was home. This was family. This was the life Theresa had chosen when she climbed out her window that night in Calico and trusted a stranger with dark eyes and a gentle voice. She had chosen freedom, and freedom had led her to love, and love had led her to this moment of perfect contentment. "I love you," she said to Kane, as she had said countless times over the past 40 years. But the words never lost their meaning, never became routine. Each time she said them, she meant them with her whole heart. "I love you too," Kane replied, bringing her hand to his lips and kissing it softly. Always and forever. As the stars began to appear in the darkening sky, Theresa leaned her head on Kane's shoulder and closed her eyes, feeling the steady rhythm of his breathing, the solid warmth of his presence. He had saved her life that night in Calico, but more than that, he had given her a reason to live. He had shown her what true love looked like, what partnership and respect and unwavering support could build. She had been forced to marry a cruel man, but a cowboy had helped her escape the night before the wedding. That simple act of courage and kindness had set her on a path that led to more happiness than she had ever dreamed possible. She had lost much in her youth, her father, her innocence, her sense of safety. But she had gained so much more. A loving husband, beautiful children, a life of purpose and meaning. As she sat there on the porch with Kane, surrounded by the evidence of the life they had built together, Theresa felt a deep sense of gratitude wash over her. Gratitude for the courage to run, for the wisdom to choose love over fear, for the strength to build something beautiful from the ashes of tragedy. Their story had started with an escape in the darkness, two desperate people running from danger. But it had become so much more than that. It had become a testament to the power of love, the importance of freedom, and the remarkable things that can happen when two people choose to face the world together. The night grew deeper, and eventually they went inside, into the warm glow of lamplight and the comfort of the home they had created. Tomorrow, they would wake and tend their garden and play with their grandchildren, and continue living the beautiful, ordinary, extraordinary life they had built. But tonight, in this moment, they simply held each other close and gave thanks for the journey that had brought them here. Kane and Theresa Emerson had found their happily ever after, not in a fairy tale or a dream, but in the real, hard, wonderful world. And they had found it together, hand in hand, heart to heart, from that desperate night in the California desert to this peaceful evening in the Oregon mountains. Their love story was complete, not with dramatic gestures or grand pronouncements, but with a lifetime of small moments of tenderness, of choosing each other every single day. As Theresa drifted off to sleep that night, safe in Kane's arms as she had been for over 4 decades, she smiled. She had escaped a cruel man and found a kind one. She had run from death and discovered life. She had been offered freedom by a cowboy with a good heart, and she had taken it with both hands and never looked back. And she had lived happily ever after, in all the ways that truly mattered.